but the effect of that is what has been the problem. In essence, even though we only spend it once, we actually budget for it twice. So we give the money to the council. Council's office spends and provides the service. And so we basically budget for it twice. Once when we gave it to them to start with, and then once through this back door through A87.
To the auditor, you mean?
No, to the various departments. So you're a department, you go and use county council service, which we have already funded out of the general fund to take care of everybody. We quantify how much the Fed should reimburse us, we quantify how much the state should reimburse them. We've already paid for it as a general fund activity, and now because of this policy change that took place in 2003, we're now having to budget it again through the general fund allocations to these departments to cover that A87 cost from 2 years ago. Let's see. The built-in redundancy ties up hundreds of thousands of dollars from year to year for many of our general fund departments. It accentuates the impression that we are always broke, that we have no money to take care of regular business. No raises for staff, no money for equipment or supplies. It's crazy. 9, look at the numbers these past few years. Over the years, I've watched us overestimate our expenditures and underestimate our revenues. We tie up hundreds of thousands of dollars by double budgeting, but only spend it once, and we use the so-called shortage of funds to justify raising fees or proposing new taxes. That's policy driven. Number 10, the auditor will make the policy decision in the vacuum of the board declining to make those decisions. I say we use the A87 plan to collect the eligible reimbursements for federal funds for general funded services provided those federally funded programs. I say we use the A87 plan to collect the eligible reimbursements from state funds for general funded services provided those state funded programs. I say we tell the auditor it is our policy to fund general fund services used by our general fund programs only once in the original appropriation. An example, this is number 11. Veteran Services. It is a primary general funded department that is not required by law. We do it because we want to, and we do it with the general fund. Why are they being assessed A87 costs? Now, if 10% of their budget is funded from the state pot, then we should collect 10% of that A87 cost because it's tied to their funding stream. You know, if they have 25% of the budget all of a sudden is funded by the state, then fine, 25% of their A87 costs should be collected because of the state funding source. But if it's 100% general fund supported, we've already provided for that service to them by funding the department, in this case, county council as an example. The same applies to the fair. The fair used to receive a significant share of their funding from the state, not anymore. The county general fund backfills some of the loss of those funds. Yet the fair is expected to pay full 87 costs on local, non-state services. That's crazy. You know, in a couple of years, Bob and I are going to be retiring from the board. 54 years of collective service will be replaced by a board that collectively amongst all 5 members will have less than 10 years of service. To understand the effect of the current A87 policy and practice will be lost to the ages. Who will know, or better yet, care? But we need to return to the pre-2003 policy in managing the A87 program. I mean, it worked fine from the early 1970s through 2003, while we still remember what it was like. The proposed budget has us approving $104 million in spending with $97 million in projected revenues. Available funding is $129 million. The cumulative growth of the excess funding available is partially due to the A87 policy to budget twice, spend once for general funded services provided to the general fund departments. And I provided a little graphic to show, you know, these monies should come in, these monies are looped back around. Yes, yes, no. That was the policy prior to 2003. Since 2003, then yes, yes, yes. It was done in a de facto way. As a board, we were never given the chance to debate that issue, to understand the merit of it, and create that kind of internal loop. Now, attached to that memo, I've included the auditor back in, I think it was in April, sent to everybody, the board and departments and stuff. This shows, you know, the services in which we're collecting, county council being one, but these are all the departmental services that are basically being recaptured. And attached to that, her memo was, her email was the actual allocation that is proposed for 2014-15. And you have on there, you know, departments that are general fund in nature, such as the fair and veteran services, and there's others. And I say those need to be filtered out. You know, it's not that we quantify what their service is, we just shouldn't be budgeting and paying for it twice. And that's the concern and the objection that I've been trying to get across for a couple, 2-3 budgets now. And so hopefully this will help the board understand that picture. It's not that what the auditor has said to us is wrong, she's been absolutely on point. It's just how it's applied and used. And the differences of opinion exist over the fact that I think it should only be budgeted and paid for once, not twice. And Diana, I have a copy here. I'd be happy to give you.
Thank you.
And they know you'll fix it.
Are there any questions? Board?
It's just a matter of information and thought. So as we get into the budget, hopefully, as we look at the different departments and listen to the departments' input, we can keep that in mind. This is paid for. That's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
I had a question. So the A87, well, maybe I'll just ask. All right, I have a question.
Okay.
So, when you bill the departments under the A87, like one of the general fund, for services, does that money coming in,
It goes back,
credit
it goes
your-
back into the budget as revenue
as
for general fund, correct.
so if, so what's the amount, like the auditor's budget, like from the general fund? Do you know, Julie? What's your income budget?
Are you talking about the cost plan or the, I mean,
No, from general fund.
It's right here, Larry.
Yeah, but.
I'm getting there.
Sorry.
According to the cost plan, the auditor controller, cost of service is $513,621, and that's part of the $2,757,000 services that they're trying to recover or capture.
So when, anyhow, it doesn't matter, but here's my point, okay? Would you correct me if I'm wrong, if I know this is kind of how, without being a. If you, so you bill out one of the, like, community service or planning department, 87. Say you bill out just for the sake of the exercise, you say $100.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so that's a hit to their budget.
hit to their
That's
budget,
an income
to the general fund.
So if you didn't do that,
We did
They
do
would-
that,
they
bottom
would have-
line would be the same.
but then what, they would have $100 less expense, and you would have $100 less income.
Correct.
So isn't it a wash?
It's a wash to the general fund. What it will not demonstrate is the actual cost of that department. You're losing the true cost of the department
To
operating.
do checks and do all that type of stuff.
No, I think the cost is there and it's quantified, is this, that you just don't have to collect it from the general fund departments because you've already paid for it through the general fund.
Right,
But,
but you're not showing the cost, the true cost in the budget of that department.
No, the point I'm making is the $2,750,000, which is the true cost of all these departments that have now been apportioned to all these various budget units. If they're a federal or state budget unit, then you have their quantified amount that you would collect from their budget. If it's a general fund department, you would have their quantified amount of what they consumed, because you have to have the full matrix in order to justify to the state and the feds what their true share is. But you don't have to budget the local share back into the budget again and go through the motions of, you know, supposedly collecting, transferring it from one pocket to the other internally, because it's already taken care of. And prior to 2003, that's how it was handled, is that we recognized what the general fund departments consumed. We just didn't collect from them a second time, because it was already paid for. And the change to this policy took place statewide. It wasn't something that was invented by our local auditor. She attended the same conference that all the other auditors in the state did in Monterey in 2003. And how I learned about this was through PSA2 and our relationship to Siskiyou County providing us services. And it was at that time that PSA2 learned, because of the auditors conference in 2003, a statewide decision was made amongst the auditors that we should, plug all this into the budget and create this internal mechanism. And they came back and did it without any real discussion with us, even though the policy is ours to really make. And I'm just saying is it doesn't make sense because all it does is it just inflates all the numbers unnecessarily. There's no extra money. It's the same money just being counted 2 and 3 times for the general fund side.
The total amount that you guys bill out for 887 from the general fund departments, if you didn't do that billing out, wouldn't you then just require more money from general fund to run your department? If you,
No, I mean, it doesn't go directly back into our fund. It would reduce the revenue coming into the general fund, the bottom line for a general fund department is it comes out neutral at the bottom.
excuse me?
It comes out neutral. You're not putting the money into the department and you're not taking it back from the department into the 887 revenue. What you're losing is what's it costing to run that department. Because all the central service departments in the county, they're part of the cost of running those departments. As we expand, the cost of the central service departments go up because we have a heavier load. So if you're not quantifying those costs to each department, you're not knowing what the full cost of that department is running.
Well, if that's the case, then we've already missed a boat, Mr. Chairman, because according to their cost allocation plan prepared, it was adopted by the board at the request of the county auditor. This is for 2014-15. This is the current budget. Total cost of services, $2,757,533. Services charged, $1,537,772. Services not charged, $1,219,761. Now, they've already backed out, say, the treasurer's office dealing with the county council office. Both general fund have nothing to do with the feds, have nothing to do with the state. So instead of building in that 887 cost, they've already backed out. There's several of those departments. I'm not sure the list of them. I think Karen gave us one at one time. So in that particular case, we've already set that precedent. I'm just saying is that the rest of the general fund funded departments, even if it's partial, should at least be prorated so that you move it from the charged column up to the not charged column. And what happens if you have a department that even has like 10% of maybe federal or state funds, you're going to wind up paying full 100% 887 costs on all your, the remaining 90% is funded out of the general fund because that's the way the system was, I guess, designed to work. What I'm just saying is that we shouldn't be paying for general fund services in a general fund funded department, in a duplicative fashion. So we already have that set up to do it. I mean, if what Diana's saying is true, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, then we should assess all the services not charged departments that you have on here. The $1,200,000 needs to be plugged into the budget, and everybody has their 887 they pay, and then we do exactly what you were saying we were intended to do. But what will mean is there will be another $1,200,000 taken out of circulation available for spending, because that will roll over and become money for next year's budget, because that's what happens.
No, it goes
with
into
revenue.
the same budget. It does not go into the next year's budget.
Well, firstly, thanks for, I think it's important that we, I know it's been a bone of contention, within maybe.
Well, what's bugged me, and it's been in my crop for 6-7 years, is being told by the auditor that I made the policy because I voted on the budget, even though that wasn't made clear when we were voting on the budget. So it was kind of like internally slipped in there. So from that point forward, this issue has had some of us provoked.
I would suggest, as you said in your letter, it's been the board began taking a serious look at this in 2006. That was some time ago. about 8 years ago.
Well, we
So-
know, every year it
Yeah,
comes up,
right.
but that's when we started having this debate.
So I think that we're a long way along in the budget, and to kind of try to tie the two together, the last second sort of.
Well, I think it's a matter of filtering out the few instances, and there's at least 2 departments, and I know there's several others if you look into it. What we need to do as a board is to say to county administration and to the county auditor that we don't want that duplicate budget, double budgeting of the funds of the general fund, and let them filter that out. It may take them a year to go through and maybe extract it, but I think as a policy, that should be our policy, not have a de facto policy implemented because they can.
Here, here,
The,
yes.
what I would,
I mean, Honey Lake TV is getting $1,808 assessed to them for A87. They are a general fund, I mean, it's a $25 fee that we put on that routes through to them and by contract. So why are they paying A87 costs? I just spotted that one on here this morning when I was looking at the list again.
so that 1887, is that for services rendered then from the auditor?
Well, not just auditor, it's auditor, it's across the matrix. If they use anything with, where's Honey Lake TV was on here, yeah, on the last page. They're being assessed $1,808. It's their share of the $1,537,000 is being collected. And, I mean, that's a local general fund source. I mean, we're taking,
But doesn't that 1887 go back to general fund,
no, they doesn't, see well,
that's collected? I guess that's.
yeah, it goes back to the general fund, it doesn't go back to Honey Lake TV, and it's basically, you take $1,808 and divide it by $25, and that tells you how many people are paying their assessment for Honey Lake TV that doesn't even go to Honey Lake TV. It comes into the general fund of the county, I guess it's a de facto tax.
But if they didn't have the
It's like a
1880,
ransom note.
if they didn't have the 1887 line item, wouldn't their budget just go down by 18?
No, $1,808 would be in their budget to be able to, take care of the utility bill and take care of whatever else they need to do. Maybe they can get us another channel. That's the point I'm making. The fair has the same frustration, and the veteran service officer has the same thing. Now, he just got some state grants, so, a part of his A87 cost should be collected as it relates to the funding from the state grants that he received. But when he has no state grants, that's general fund money. So we give him, here's a loaf of bread, and we'll take back a chunk of it and keep it for ourselves.
I mean, again, thanks for all your work. And I think, I'm certainly not ready to make a vote today to banish 80. I don't know enough about it. But I think, what I would like to do is see this on an agenda in the next 2-3 weeks. And I'd like to really dig into it and give it some the validity that,
Be my guest, take all the time you need.
and make a decision. And I think the board should vote whether they want to continue as is or make a change.
I would like to read that A87. I don't know much about it, I'll be honest with you, and I'm not ready to make a vote on that, so I'd like to read it.
Basically, it's just an accounting procedure
Right.
to show the actual cost of what it costs a department to run.
Tom, the concept you want to focus on is that.
Yeah, I got that.
That's what it
Well, let's
is.
agendize it and give the auditor an opportunity to comment properly and make a decision as a board. I think, like you said,
We
pretty
should
soon.
probably do that sooner
Well,
rather than later.
we call the county auditor the county pickpocket. That was what, Karen became. And this is an example of how you do the pickpocketing. I'd like to say the county auditor is not the pickpocket.
Well, I think the only way to clear the air is going to be to have a proper discussion where all sides get to say their piece, and then we make a decision. And like you said, before the board has 5 guys with very little experience.
Yeah.
I'd like to be part of that
Yeah,
discussion.
I think you guys need to figure it out.
So maybe we could get that on in a couple of weeks.
It's not an easy one to do. It's taken me 40 years to figure it out. So hope you can do it sooner than that.
Okay, so we're gonna take public comment on this item. Eileen.
Eileen Spencer, countyhealth.com. Is it possible to get a copy of what you've been talking about?
Yes, a copy.
It's not it's not on the website.
This was,
You don't have a copy?
I finished writing this morning, so,
The-
yeah.
This document
Yeah, I
wasn't
gave the-
distributed?
I gave the clerk 2 copies.
have a
and
copy?
She has
Yes,
a
I can
copy
email
that
it
she
to you.
can make
Oh,
available.
The meeting?
I appreciate it. One other comment, I think, I've been around for a while, 15 years, and one thing I think the public has to be thankful for, well, 2 things. Kurt Bonham was an elected auditor and Jim Chapman was an elected auditor, and this is a good example. Thank you.
All right. Okay, anyone else for public comment? Thanks, Jim. We'll give it serious
The
consideration.
ball's in your court.
So Richard, what do you say?
Richard, so
The 19th, would that be?
Yeah. Thank you. All righty, let's move on to item C2, the budget. Julie gonna give that.
I'll maybe introduce it, then Julie can get into some more details. So, 2 weeks ago, we brought to the board the CAO's recommended budget. Since then, we've made a few changes that I'd like to kind of go through based on things we've discovered and discussions we've had with departments, and I'd like to kind of go through those. We have, in your packet, you'll see requests from the county auditor and the county clerk to revise their budgets, increases in both cases. And I met with both those departments and made some minor changes in my recommendation based on those discussions. With regards to the auditor's office, the initial request was to include an additional $30,000 in their budget for transition costs, because we've got a new auditor coming on board the first of the year, and they have a desire for their transition to hire an assistant auditor prior to that time, to give some time to cross-train. The initial request was for 3 months of additional staffing, which would be October 1st. We haggled a little bit back and forth. I favored maybe a 1 month crossover, and we settled on 2 months as my new recommendation that's included in the numbers that you have today. That money would only be spent if, in fact, somebody's hired prior, that 2 months prior. The auditor can get into, the auditor-elect rather, can get into to her arguments in favor of that transition, but this is their busy time coming into the fall and at the end of the year also, so I do concur with that. The second written request was received from the county clerk recorder. I had initially recommended that we transfer more funds from one of the recorder's trusts to the general fund to fund the department, because it seemed that appropriate that those recorders' trust funds be used to fund the recorder's function in the department. When we further analyzed it, it looks like the level that I had recommended transferring the money exceeded by about $5,000 the actual function, so I reduced that trust transfer recommendation by $5,000 back down to the $15,000, accommodating the recorder's request. Let's see. Having said that, other changes, I'm going to let Julie go into detail. The auditor provided us with some updated fund balances end-of-year fund balances, which were increases that provide a little more cushion to the budget, and I'll let Julie describe, or Diana describe those. Other than that, essentially, the budget remains as it was 2 weeks ago when we presented it to the board. And I'm not sure exactly what kind of format you want to go into in terms of discussion, but that's kind of the overview of the changes we've made since the last couple weeks, and I'll let Julie go through her memo that she addressed to the board.
Okay, there's actually two packets that I distributed. One, let's go through the one that was distributed last Wednesday. I do have new revenues, so I did at that time include the adjusted revenue page for the Williamson Act. But I have a new, in the one I distributed today, there's an entire printout of the new revenues, and that's gonna be what we're looking at right now. So that's the most current version, but as of last Wednesday, I did attach the one page. There was some adjustments to the water system, so that page is attached also, and in the expenditures. If you want to slip it in the section, I can tell you it's section 7 for the expenditure side. The revenues will be included in the new one you got today. The allocated position report had just a classification manual adjustment that we made. We had misclassification wrong for probation, so we corrected that, and that page is attached, so you can slip that one in allocated positions if you'd like to do so. There's a new Lassen County Coordination Council budget with an increase in professional and specialized services.
What amount, Julie, did that go to?
25,000, it went from 5,000 to 25,000 in the Coordination Council budget.
And on that note, after our discussions last week, the strategy there was that some of the coordination function would be provided through the planning budget with existing staff, and then the 25 would be available to hopefully work with Modoc County to share theirs for some portion of the year.
Sorry, thanks.
Honey Lake TV, we talked about that this morning. That was in coordination with the corporation, what they thought their needs would be, so I worked with them on that. There's a new Board of Supervisors budget, and like I said, there's the new revenues. Sometimes when we're working with the document, there's a lot of columns and a lot of rows, and so we'll minimize things to try to focus on, like when we're entering the actuals, and so if we forget to unminimize them, sometimes you can't see them, but there was a line in both the Board of Supervisors budget and some revenues in public health that we needed to unhide. They were included in the total, so the bottom line didn't change, just they weren't in the latest printout. In the new packet today is, like I said, the adjusted revenues, and there were some additional changes. Richard just talked about 2 of them in the auditor and the clerk. There's a new fund summary. This is as of Friday at 5 o'clock, and that is where we are today. So the new fund summary has, in the yellow, is the general fund and public safety and probation are all projected to end with a 0 fund balance, but it's a balanced budget for them. There's the new revenues. Included in that is just a few things. There was an increase in the ACO secured taxes of $5,000 and a $2,000 increase in the cemetery secured taxes. So we just made those adjustments while we were making adjustments that we knew of Friday. There was a reduction in state 50% excess court fines, but what that really means is, since that's a reduction in the probation budget, it actually increased their revenue, so that's reflected in the current revenues. And then we took a look Friday at fund balances, the current fund balances, including payables and receivables, and so there were some changes to public safety and probation, or public safety and general fund. Good news, so we were happy about that. So that allowed reductions in transfers to probation and public safety from the general fund, so that was helpful. And so we reduced the transfer from tobacco settlement that we were using to go to the general fund, and so we'll have that for future need. or future board direction. And there was some additional money budgeted in non-departmental. So I have attached revised fund summary, the latest and greatest revenues and financing sources, and the new expenditures for the recorder, the auditor. There's a new transfer schedule reflecting, and